Hey, what's going on guys, Khraze here, and today we're going to go over 10 tips and tricks that will help you tremendously in the VIP demo. Luckily enough, I was able to play quite a bit last night as well as this morning, finishing all of the story missions, the available stronghold, as well as many of the open world events. I even unlocked the storm, and I will say it's very powerful, way more powerful than I thought, also very fun, but I do know that a lot of you still have issues connecting to the game and playing, so hopefully EA fixes their issues soon and you get to play. But in the meantime, hopefully you will enjoy this video and let's get to it. Coming up at number 1, I'll be going over the combat a little bit because this is where I see most of the people making a lot of mistakes, a lot of big mistakes I might say. One thing I keep seeing other players doing is rushing in the middle of a huge group just to get melted in seconds, especially on the hard difficulty. It's not that the AI is too advanced or anything, but their damage is definitely substantial and they can melt you in seconds, as I've said. So what I suggest doing instead is to flank them as much as possible unless you're a Colossus using a shield. Use the control button or equivalent on the controller to dodge incoming damage and always use your abilities. I cannot stress this enough. Use your abilities as much as possible, especially if you have both combo and detonator abilities, and you can set up those combos for additional damage and even spread them to other enemies around that. It's very potent and it's something you should be using. Also pay very close attention to weak points that the enemies have and try to direct at least 90% of your shots towards those weak points. They oftentimes even disable the damage that the enemy does. Some of the common weak points to take note of are the fuel tanks on the arms and the back of the flamethrower enemy Colossus. Not only will you deal extra damage to these, but it will also interrupt his attacks and even do damage over time on him. For the big turrets, which seem to be very precise and deadly from huge distances, there's an area in the back of the turret which is very susceptible to damage, so try to flank that as much as possible and get behind it so you can do as much damage to it and kill it in seconds. If you have party members, then they can distract the turret and you can go behind it and do that damage. For the titans themselves, I suggest shooting the arms and the back area when they start glowing, as this would indicate an incoming attack, and if you do enough damage you can also interrupt that, which is very useful. Oh, and last but not least, for everything else, aim for those headshots and do that around the clock. If you aim those headshots, you're going to kill them in seconds. Additionally, I also suggest having at least one party member, maybe even yourself, carrying something like a frost grenade. Slowing and freezing enemies in Anthem is extremely powerful right now, even against big enemies, as it's pretty much going to let you set them out for both detonations, but also freeze them and make it easier for you to get behind them or flank them and hit them in the weak spots. Coming up at number 2, while engaged in combat, you'll inevitably get damaged and possibly even get to low health. There's 2 things I suggest you doing here in case you see yourself in this situation. First, keep an eye out for the red crystals dropping down from the enemies and go ahead and grab them as fast as possible, as these will regenerate part of your core health, aka the green bar, which is the important one. Also get the green crystals, as these will replenish your ammo, and this will be especially useful in long fights, as you will definitely run through that ammo and deplete it, so go ahead and grab as much of these as possible. Additionally, if you happen to not see any of these dropping for some reason, then try to disengage before going too low into the red, so you at the very least get your shield back and not get downed. Oh, and one more thing here, big bosses will drop red and green crystals at various times during combat, depending on the damage it's done to it, so the bosses are a little bit different compared to the trash mobs, which only drop these crystals upon death. At number 3, after successfully completing an expedition, you'll get the expedition end screen as well as the shiny XP, the achievements, the rewards. I suggest you guys go ahead and press the action button here to skip all of these unless you want to see them, and in the item reward menu or later on in the forge, you can choose to salvage the gear that you either have duplicates of or you find not to be as good and have something better. In the case of the VIP demo, this goes mostly for the white gear and the green one, or blue if you already have duplicates of, and the reason you'll want to salvage these is because they will reward you with a lot of parts as well as possible amber, and all of these are used as crafting materials, which is a great supplement in case you want additional loot. And speaking of crafting, at number 4 we have just that, the crafting system. If you want to access that, go ahead and enter the forge right by the Javelin Bay. Each gear or weapon section has an additional tab, and that one deals with crafting. You can even see the name in the tab right there, and here's where you can craft anything from uncommon to epic items, assuming of course to have unlocked their respective blueprints. And you will get these blueprints randomly from encounters of varying rarity levels, and you will get at least a few green ones without even realizing, possibly even blue ones. And yeah, go ahead, check what you're missing in terms of gear, and if you have the blueprints to craft something good, then go ahead and craft them. They will typically require like 8 to 12 parts and like 5 amber to do this. Now, if you happen to not have enough materials at hand to craft what you need, especially the amber I was talking about, then what I suggest you guys do is go ahead into the free play mode and start collecting minerals and organic deposits. Free play is probably the best place to get crafting materials. You will see these by their distinct structures and the fact that they have a health bar on top of them. You can either interact with them using the action button or simply destroy them using your attacks, and once you do so, you will see some stuff popping up, like a compound, a mineral compound, or a organic one. You will also randomly get amber from these of various rarities, and it's definitely a good thing to do. All items so far require, as I've said, 5 amber and anywhere between 8 to 12 weapon or javelin parts. And speaking of javelin parts, you can also get these by dismantling gear you find in the wild. It's like a little bit hard to notice as there's definitely a lot of scraps on the ground, but once you do that, you're going to realize what it is and you're going to be able to get them. Speaking of the open world, you'll also want to do some open world events, and this is the number 6 spot on today's list. These open world events can be quite fun, challenging, but most of all very rewarding. While there are small ones in there as well, I suggest trying to go as close as possible to the cave entrances you can see on the map. They are pretty distinct, and more often than not they will have some enemies surrounding them, they will have some events in them, and these will eventually lead you inside some dungeon-like interiors, not that big but not that small either. They are packed filled with enemies, loot, and a nice chest reward at the end of them. And by the way, these chests are probably the best in terms of the amount of amber that they can spawn, but you can also get a lot of items and even the blueprints. So yeah, make sure to do these events as they are quite useful. Now, in terms of weapon loadouts, I'm mostly going to address this towards the rangers and the interceptors out there, but honestly this would apply to all of the javelins. I strongly suggest everybody carrying one heavy charge up sniper rifle. That thing is absolutely amazing. It annihilates everything in sight. A full charge up shot from this thing can do up to 600, maybe even 1000 damage, and doing it from far away can make most of the NPCs surrounding the target not engage in you, at least not at first. It's also absolutely devastating against those annoying turrets requiring less than 3 shots to take down. It's also amazing against the big flame-throwing Colossus javelins, and it's all around an excellent weapon. It's absolutely precise, and since it has an explosive round, if you happen to shoot it in a group of enemies, you can pretty much destroy them all at the same time, which is pretty freaking cool. It's almost as powerful as some of the skills in the game. There's also an abundance of weapons dropping in the demo, by the way, which should mean that you will get a sniper eventually, possibly even a blue one, and if you don't, you can outright craft it, as it's definitely very potent. So yeah, I suggest carrying those sniper rifles, as it's pretty much a must, probably in the stronghold the most. I think the stronghold is where you will have the most use for it, because there are a few sections which are really difficult to deal with if you don't take the turrets fast enough. Coming up at number 8, while I know that going full damage in terms of gear and skills is very tempting, especially on the hard difficulty, you might want to reconsider that and go a little bit more defensive next time. I'm specifically talking about the support slots that most javelins, with the exception of the Colossus, can either use something that boosts damage or stops incoming damage that the party takes. I suggest you always carry something like a Ranger's Bulwark Point or the Storm's Wind Wall, as it's definitely useful at deflecting incoming projectile damage. Additionally, the Interceptor's Rayleigh Cry can clear up those fire or acid debuffs on your entire team, so that is very good as well. Oh, and for the love of God, please pay attention to the party members who get downed. You'll typically see them having those red indicators over them and go ahead and try to save them as much as possible. Maybe even put down a bulwark point or a wind wall in front of you so you can safely resurrect them. But if you can't do that, if you're the last party remaining, then you can disengage a little bit from the enemy, pull them a little bit away, and then get behind them, resurrect your party members, and try to pick things from there. At number 9, I know a lot of people have a little bit of a problem with flying and swimming in Anthem, especially on the PC version, and even more so when using the keyboard and mouse. And some of the things I recommend you doing here is, outside of just taking your time to get accustomed with the controls, is to go into the options menu, enter the control section, and then turn down the sensitivity down on almost all of the features you can see there, including the camera aim, the zoom, but even more so on the flight and the swim controls. I've turned mine down to around 30% because it was way too responsive to my movements, but you will need to play around a little bit as this can be quite hardware dependent. So for my mouse, I found to be 30% a good choice, but you might want to go even less than that to about 10% if you find that to be a good all-around choice. Now the last and final point I have is in regards of the gear score, which you can see while in the Forge Javelin menu, and the gear score is shown on the top right corner of the screen. Contrary to popular belief, this is not just one number you can flex with, but it actually plays a huge role in how effective you will be in combat and everything combat related. So it influences the amount of damage you will do. It even increases your health bar sections as you make it even higher. So aim for good weapons with good bonuses as well as good gear with good bonuses, and each of these items you will see having some gear score on their icon, as well as when you inspect them you will see different numbers like 16 for green items or 18 for blue ones. So yeah, I don't know the calculations yet exactly, but I do know that there's some hidden multiplier influenced by the item score. So yeah, the higher it is, the better you will be, so try to aim for high gear score. And that is pretty much it with the tips and tricks I have for you guys. One quick announcement before finishing this video off is in regards to the giveaway that I'm doing. If you want to take your chance at winning a digital copy of Anthem on the platform of your choice, then what you can do is follow the links down below in either the description box or in the pinned post, and yeah, join my Discord if you want to like group up, find other players to play with, and generally talk about Anthem as well as other games. And in the meantime, a like and a subscribe would be super appreciated, and yeah, peace.